Rosa wakes up every day before dawn. The dim sunlight still barely touches the streets when she puts on her uniform and leaves the house towards the hospital. The route has been the same for 5 years. An old bus that crosses the city center, where she meets familiar faces, other workers who, like her, are always silent in the early hours of the morning. However, Rosa carries within her a contagious calm, something few people realize. Although life has brought her great challenges, the loss of her husband and the responsibility of raising 2 children alone, she never complains. At the hospital, Rosa is known for her punctuality and dedication. She knows her work may seem invisible to many, but not to her. With each hallway she cleans, each room she organizes, Rosa feels like she is contributing to something bigger. She sees doctors and nurses as noble people, saving lives every day, and she, in a way, feels that she is also part of this cycle, ensuring that the environment is always impeccable. For her, her work is a way of serving and caring, even if indirectly. Among all the doctors, there is one figure who has always caught your attention: the drag. Carolina. Tall, always impeccable in her white coat, Carolina is a renowned surgeon at the hospital. She has a firm posture, speaks directly and, to many, can seem distant and cold. But Rosa, with her attentive gaze, notices something deeper. Carolina carries a tension in her shoulders, an invisible weight that only the most sensitive eyes can notice. Rosa doesn't know exactly what's happening in the doctor's personal life, but she understands that it's not easy. Still, Carolina never shows weakness, at least not publicly. On that particular day, Rosa starts her night shift as usual. The hospital at night has a different, almost melancholy atmosphere. The hallways, which during the day are filled with the sound of hurried footsteps and conversations, are now silent, with only the distant echo of monitoring machines and the occasional sound of gurney wheels passing by. While cleaning the cold floor, Rosa reflects on her own life. She thinks about her children, the financial challenges, but also how grateful she is to have a job that supports her. Her faith keeps her standing. During a quick break, Rosa goes to the window of an empty room and looks at the starry sky. She takes a deep breath, trying to shake off any worries. It is in these moments of silence that she finds strength. Working at the hospital can be lonely, but she feels part of something bigger. Rosa knows that, despite being invisible in the eyes of many, she has her value there. The hospital is like a city that never sleeps, and even in the quietest hours, something important is happening. As Rosa walks through the corridors, she observes, as always, the details around her. Every doctor, every nurse, every patient has their own story, and she, without anyone knowing, was a silent witness to many important moments in that place. She remembers a time when a doctor, nervous before surgery, dropped his papers, and it was she who picked them up discreetly, without saying a word. This was how Rosa worked. Silently, efficiently, but always attentive. What Rosa didn't know was that night, one of those silent moments would be even more meaningful than she could imagine. That same night, while Rosa continues her routine, the hospital begins to experience unexpected activity. The emergency room is hectic with the arrival of a new patient in critical condition. Drag. Carolina is called in a hurry to perform a high-risk surgery. Still exhausted from a week full of difficult procedures, Carolina tries to stay focused, but something about her seems different. Her thoughts are cloudy, a reflection of the personal problems that she tries to ignore, but which are now beginning to weigh more heavily than ever. Carolina has had complicated surgeries countless times, but at that moment her mind seems far away. Her recent divorce and the pressure of maintaining her reputation at the hospital consume her, and she begins to feel mild dizziness as she prepares for the operation. She washes her hands, puts on gloves, but her eyes are dull, as if tension is clouding her vision. The team around her doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary, accustomed to the doctor's seriousness. They trust her completely, and this only increases the weight that Carolina feels on her shoulders. Meanwhile, Rosa finishes cleaning the hallway near the operating room. She notices the accelerated movement and, out of curiosity, takes a discreet look through the glass window of the door. She sees Carolina preparing for surgery and something makes her stop. It's not unusual for Rosa to see the doctor in this state of concentration. But today there's something different. Carolina's face is too tense, her movements are slightly uncoordinated, and Rosa, with her sensitivity, feels a kind of urgency in the air. Your heart races. She thinks about following her path, but something stops her from leaving. Inside the room, Carolina begins the procedure with the same dexterity as always. Surgical instruments are passed from hand to hand, and the team works in perfect harmony. However, Carolina, already in the first stages of the operation, begins to get lost in small details. Her hands are still steady, but her mind is tired, and she begins to make small errors in judgment. The patient's blood pressure suddenly drops, and Carolina, without realizing what is happening, ignores an important alert from the monitor. Outside, Rosa observes the team, who still haven't noticed the seriousness of the situation. She sees the monitors flickering and something inside her screams that something is wrong. She doesn't understand the medical details, but her years in the hospital have made her recognize certain patterns. The sound of the machines starts to sound different, and she feels distressed, as if it were a premonition. Rosa hesitates for a moment, trying to convince herself that she has no place there, that it is not her place to interfere. But the anguish doesn't leave her. Suddenly, Carolina makes a fatal mistake. A procedure that should be done with caution is rushed, and the patient's condition begins to deteriorate rapidly. The team, finally realizing something is wrong, looks at Carolina with concern, but she is stuck in her own emotional breakdown and doesn't react quickly enough. It is at this moment that Rosa, not knowing exactly what to do, makes a courageous decision. She knocks on the glass door, catching the attention of one of the assistants. The assistant, surprised and irritated, opens the door, ready to reprimand her. But Rosa, with her eyes fixed on the monitors, just says, "The sound, it has changed. Something's wrong. Aren't you listening?" The assistant, still confused, looks back at the patient and, at that moment, realizes the mistake that Carolina was about to make. He acts quickly, corrects the procedure, and the patient, by the skin of his teeth, is stabilized. The room plunges into a heavy silence, and Carolina finally realizes her near-fatal mistake. Rosa, not exactly understanding the impact of what just happened, moves away from the door, slowly returning to her work. But inside the room, Dr. Carolina and her team remain static, trying to process what could have been an irreversible tragedy. For Carolina, the feeling of almost losing control of a surgery shakes her spirit deeply. She doesn't know it yet, but Rosa's simple and unexpected act has just saved her from an irreparable stain on her career, and possibly from losing a life. When the operation is over, the silence in the operating room persists. Carolina, he is standing motionless, looking at the patient he almost lost. Your mind is still shaken by the pressure and exhaustion, but now there's something more. The shock of the mistake you almost made. The doctor, who has always been seen as unbeatable, feels reality weighing on her shoulders in a way she has never experienced before. For the first time in many years of her career, she realizes that she is human, vulnerable, and this terrifies her. The medical team slowly disperses, relieved to have prevented a tragedy, but clearly uncomfortable with what has just happened. No one dares to comment on what they saw. Everyone respects Carolina too much to even mention the mistake. She, still in shock, leaves the room without saying a word. Your head spins, your thoughts are confused, and the only thing you can do is take a deep breath as you walk to the doctor's break room. Meanwhile, Rosa continues her work as if nothing had happened. She returns to the hallways, grabs her cleaning supplies and continues with her tasks. However, his mind can't stop thinking about what he witnessed. She knows she did something important by alerting the assistant, but she doesn't fully understand the impact of her action. For her, it was just a matter of instinct. Something was wrong, and she couldn't ignore it. Rosa doesn't look for recognition, much less gratitude. For her, it was a simple gesture of care, a reflection of the attention she always dedicates to what she does. Carolina sits in the break room, alone, with her hands shaking slightly. She tries to drink a glass of water, but her hands won't cooperate. For the first time, tears threaten to run down his face. She hasn't cried since the divorce, but now she feels a mix of emotions she can't control. Relief at having avoided a tragedy, fear of what almost happened, and deep emotional exhaustion. Carolina knows she needs to confront her demons, but she doesn't know where to start. As she tries to compose herself, one of the surgical assistants enters the room to get some documents. He hesitates when he sees her there, visibly shaken, but decides not to comment. However, he approaches and, in a low tone, says, "Doctor, that cleaning woman. She saved the situation today." Carolina doesn't react immediately. The words echo in your mind. Rosa, the cleaning lady she always saw in the hallways, did something that no one else noticed. This hits her deeply. She gets up, still not knowing what to think. Deep down, Carolina feels ashamed. As one of the hospital's most respected surgeons, she almost failed, and a woman who had no medical knowledge realized her mistake before anyone else. Wounded pride mixes with gratitude, creating emotional turmoil. Carolina realizes that she needs to do something. Not just to say thank you, but to recognize that, on that day, Rosa was more than just a cleaning lady. She saved a life. The next day, Rosa arrives at the hospital for another work shift. For her, nothing has changed. She continues with her routine as always. Last night's episode is distant in his mind, like just another moment when instinct took over. Rosa never expects recognition for her actions. What she does out of duty, out of respect for her work. His world is simple, focused on the survival of his family, the well-being of his children, and the daily delivery to the hospital. Dr. Carolina, on the other hand, cannot forget what happened. The night was long and sleepless, and the surgeon's mind revisits every detail of the surgery, every mistake, every wrong decision. She knows that if Rosa hadn't acted, the worst would have happened. The image of Rosa, humble and always so discreet in the corridors, now occupies a significant space in her mind. Carolina decides she needs to find her, not just to thank her, but to confront her own failings. Around noon, Carolina finally finds Rosa in the hallway, cleaning the windows of a less busy wing. The doctor, with her heart racing and a strange feeling of nervousness, approaches the cleaning lady. Rosa, surprised to see Carolina so close, drops the cloth and looks at her with respect, but also with a certain shyness. They have never exchanged more than glances and formal greetings, and now, face to face, the atmosphere seems charged with something deeper. "Rosa, I wanted to talk to you," Carolina begins, her voice shaking slightly. Rosa, with her usual calmness, smiles slightly and replies, "Of course, doctor. What can I do for you?" Carolina takes a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "Last night, you saved a life. I was about to make a mistake, and it was thanks to you that we managed to avoid a tragedy. I don't know how to thank you." Rosa's humility manifests itself immediately. She shakes her head and responds, "I just did what I thought was right. I didn't do anything big." But for Carolina, what Rosa did was much more than that. It was an act of courage and perception. While the entire hospital saw her as a simple cleaning lady, Carolina now understood that Rosa was much more than that. Carolina, still feeling vulnerable, looks into Rosa's eyes and sees a wisdom that she herself, with all her education and success, does not possess. The gratitude she feels is profound, and at that moment, Carolina makes a decision that will change their lives forever. After the brief conversation with Rosa, Dr. Carolina spends the rest of the day reflecting on how she can express her gratitude in a genuine way. The surgeon knows that a simple thank you is not enough for what Rosa did. Throughout her career, Carolina has been praised countless times, received awards and recognition, but has never felt so deeply impacted by someone as she does now. Rosa, a simple woman with no formal health education, showed more care and compassion at a critical time than many of her medical colleagues. Carolina can't get the thought out of her head that Rosa deserves something more. In the following days, the idea matures. She begins to observe Rosa's routine from afar, realizing how dedicated the woman is to her work and, at the same time so invisible to most people in the hospital. She sees Rosa greeting patients with a smile, cleaning every corner with the same care and, above all, treating every detail with an attention that many there did not have. Carolina, who spent most of her life immersed in her career, now sees the hospital from a new perspective. She realizes that the system, in a way, ignores people like Rosa, who work behind the scenes and are vital to the functioning of everything. So, Carolina makes an audacious decision. She wants to offer Rosa an opportunity for transformation. It won't just be a gift, but a chance to truly change your life. The following week, Carolina calls Rosa into her office. Rosa enters timidly, thinking that perhaps the doctor has some request related to cleaning her room. But, contrary to what she expects, Carolina asks her to sit down. The doctor begins to speak, with a mixture of nervousness and sincerity. "Rosa, since that night, I haven't stopped thinking about what you did. I understood that you not only saved a life, but taught me something important about attention and care. I want to offer you an opportunity." Rosa, surprised, "Just listen." Carolina continues, "I know you love this hospital, that you do your work with dedication, but I see more in you. I want to offer you a scholarship so you can study nursing if that is something you would like. The hospital has an employee incentive program, and I will mentor you myself if you accept." Carolina's words fall like a silent bomb for Rosa, who never, not even in her wildest dreams, imagined anything like this. Rosa was completely paralyzed by the offer of drag. Carolina. She looked at the doctor as if she was trying to process what she had just heard. A scholarship? For her? The idea of studying nursing had never crossed her mind. Since she started working at the hospital, Rosa has always believed that her role was behind the scenes, taking care of tasks that many considered simple, but which, for her, were essential for the functioning of the institution. She never imagined that she could be something more, that someone like Dr. Carolina could see potential in her. For a few moments, Rosa tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. She felt a mixture of gratitude, fear, and insecurity. "Doctor, I don't know what to say," Rosa stammered, feeling her heart speed up. Carolina, noticing Rosa's hesitation, smiled gently. "I understand that it's a lot to process at once. I'm not expecting you to decide now. I just want you to know that I see something special in you, Rosa, and I think that with the right training you can do so much more than you're welcome." Despite the words of encouragement, Rosa felt a weight on her chest. The idea of going back to school, of leaving your comfort zone, was scary. Besides, she wondered if she could do it. And your children? How would she balance it all? At the same time, a small spark of hope began to ignite within her. Maybe this would be a chance not just for her, but for her children as well. Maybe she could set an example of overcoming for them. Rosa's hands shook slightly as she stared at the doctor. I need some time to think," Rose said finally. Caroline nodded. "Of course, I understand. Think calmly. I just want you to know that I'll be here for you, whatever you decide." Rosa stood up, still trying to assimilate the magnitude of the offer. When he left the office, his head was racing. She returned to her work mechanically, but her mind was elsewhere. For the rest of the day, the thought of the scholarship never left her. She reflected on what this would mean for her life and her family. That night, Rosa arrived home and, as always, prepared dinner for her children. The two teenagers were in the living room, talking and laughing, oblivious to the storm of thoughts that was agitating their mother's mind. During dinner, Rosa watched her children's faces, trying to imagine what it would be like to tell them about Dr. Carolina's proposal. Would they understand? Would they support her? She was filled with doubts, but also with a new emotion, the feeling that her life was about to change. After dinner, Rosa sat at the kitchen table, with a cup of tea in her hands. The silence in the house allowed his thoughts to flow more clearly. Carolina's proposal was scary, but Rosa began to realize that, perhaps, this was a chance she would never have again. For the first time in many years, she allowed herself to dream of a different future. A future where she could not just be a cleaner, but a healthcare professional directly helping people. It was a dream that still seemed distant, but now, thanks to Carolina, it was within reach. In the days that followed, Rosa continued her work at the hospital with Dr. Carolina's offer weighing on her mind. Every time she walked through the hallways, she found herself imagining what life as a nurse would be like. She watched the nurses in action, the way they interacted with patients, the way they were an integral part of the medical team. Slowly, Rosa began to feel more connected to the idea, but there were still doubts. At night, at home, she reflected on her responsibilities and the possible changes that would come. Finally, after almost a week of reflection, Rosa found the courage to talk to her children. After dinner, she called them to sit with her in the living room. "I have something important to tell you," she began nervously. The children, surprised by their mother's serious tone, looked at each other and then turned their attention to Rosa. "At the hospital, something happened that changed everything for me. Dr. Carolina offered me a scholarship to study nursing." The silence in the room was palpable. Rosa's children's eyes widened in surprise. "Really, Mom?" asked the oldest. "That's amazing." The other, younger son seemed equally excited. "Are you going to do it?" he asked, a gleam of expectation in his eyes. Rosa, seeing her children's positive reaction, smiled for the first time in days. "I was scared to talk to you about it," she admitted. "But I think this is an opportunity one can't pass up. What do you think?" Her children, without hesitation, encouraged her. "Mom, you deserve this. You work so hard, you dedicate yourself so much. You're going to be an excellent nurse." Her children's words filled Rosa's heart with courage. She never imagined she would receive so much support. The fear I felt, little by little, began to be replaced by determination. She looked at her children with tears in her eyes, moved. "If you guys think I can do it, then I'll try." The next day, Rosa went to work with a new decision made. When he arrived at the hospital, his heart was lighter. She knew that, at the end of the day, she would talk to Dr. Carolina and accept the offer. As he cleaned the hallways, the feeling of insecurity still hovered in the background. But now there was something stronger than fear. The certainty that this was his chance to change his life and the life of his family. At the end of the shift, Rosa went to Dr. Carolina's office. The doctor greeted her with a gentle smile, as if she knew what was coming. "I thought a lot, Doctor," Rosa began, taking a deep breath, "and I've decided that I'm going to accept your offer. I'm going to go to nursing school." Carolina smiled, a wide, relieved smile. "I'm very happy with your decision, Rosa. You won't regret it. I'll be with you every step of the way." Carolina's words were like a balm for Rosa, who now felt that the future was in her hands. With the decision made, Rosa began her journey of transformation. The first step was to enroll in the nursing course with the help of Dr. Carolina. The doctor, true to her promise, was by Rosa's side at every stage of the process. At first, Rosa felt out of place. Entering a classroom after so many years without studying was scary. Most of the other students were younger, many fresh out of high school. Rosa, at 45 years old, felt like an outsider. However, Dr. Carolina was always there to motivate her, reminding her that she had something special, life experience and a vision of the hospital that few there had. In the first few weeks, Rosa faced difficulties. She wasn't used to the medical terms, the technical texts, and the long nights of studying after her shifts at the hospital. But with each challenge, she remembered her children and the trust that Carolina placed in her. Slowly, with great determination, Rosa began to stand out. She studied during breaks from work, read during bus rides, and, when she got home, set aside hours after dinner to review what she had learned. Her children helped her, bringing study material from school and encouraging her to continue. As time passed, something incredible began to happen. Not only was Rosa understanding the concepts, but she was also standing out as one of the most dedicated students. She was the first to arrive at practical classes and the last to leave. Her hospital experience gave her an advantage as she was already familiar with the medical environment, even if from a different perspective. The teachers noticed her effort and began to praise her, and Dr. Carolina, always in touch, felt proud to see Rosa's transformation. The nursing course was demanding, but with each new achievement, Rosa felt more confident. She began to see a future where she could be more than a cleaner, where she could use her natural instinct to care for other people, but now with the knowledge to do it professionally. With each passing stage, Rosa connected more with patients, understanding their pain and fears, and offering not only technical care, but also the emotional comfort that has always been part of her nature. Rosa began to realize that she was transforming not only her life, but also that of her family. Her children, now teenagers, saw her as an example of resilience and dedication. They felt inspired by their mother's courage and began to dedicate themselves more to their studies, knowing that if Rosa could face such great challenges, so could they. For Rosa, this was the greatest reward of all, seeing her family prosper alongside her. Dr. Carolina, in turn, closely monitored Rosa's progress. She knew her bet was right. Rosa had potential that few saw, and now she was blossoming. For Carolina, observing this transformation was also a personal journey. She, who had always focused on her career, now understood that her role as a doctor and mentor could go beyond surgeries and diagnoses. After months of intense studies, Rosa found herself in an advanced stage of her nursing course. Every day was a victory, proof that she could go beyond what she always believed possible. Her progress in the course was remarkable, and she was already beginning to feel like part of the hospital's medical team, no longer just an invisible cleaner. Rosa was treated with respect by colleagues, teachers, and even other doctors, who saw her as a professional in training and not just someone behind the scenes. However, Rosa's journey was far from easy. At the hospital, she still worked night shifts to support her children and provide the necessities at home. The nights were long and exhausting, and the mornings were filled with classes and studies. She often found herself at the limit of her strength, struggling with fatigue and the doubts that occasionally arose. Am I going too far? Will I be able to handle everything? These questions echoed in his mind on lonely mornings. Dr. Carolina, however, never allowed Rosa to give up. As her mentor, she was constantly there, checking in on how Rosa was coping with the course and workload. Carolina knew well the pressure of hospital life and knew that Rosa was facing immense challenges, both emotionally and physically. "You are stronger than you know, Rosa," Carolina often said. "Everything you're doing now will be worth it, trust me." These words of encouragement kept Rosa steady on her path. The bond between Rosa and Carolina became increasingly deeper. Mutual respect evolved into sincere friendship. Carolina began to open up more about her own life, sharing how work and personal pressures had affected her marriage and mental health. Rosa, with her simple and direct wisdom, offered advice that came from the heart. "You also need to take care of yourself, doctor. You can't save lives and forget yours." These words touched Carolina in an unexpected way, and she began to see Rosa not just as an apprentice, but as a true friend, someone who helped her see life more clearly. As Rosa advanced in her studies, a new opportunity arose. The hospital was offering a practical internship in an intensive care ward, a chance to apply what I had learned directly in the hospital setting. Rosa was excited, but also apprehensive. Caring for critically ill patients would be a huge responsibility. Carolina, however, did not hesitate to encourage her. "You're more than ready, Rosa. That's the next step. Go ahead." The internship brought new challenges. Rosa was now at the heart of the hospital, dealing with delicate cases and patients in serious conditions. She felt the weight of the decisions she had to make alongside the more experienced nurses. But every day his confidence grew. The ability he always had to care for others was now being refined and improved with the technical knowledge he had acquired. Patients and their families began to notice her presence, and Rosa, always with her compassionate approach, gained everyone's affection and trust. Despite the difficulties, Rosa began to see the direct impact of her work. She helped ease patients' pain, comforted distressed family members, and, above all, made a difference in lives that were at risk. For the first time, Rosa felt like she was in the right place. She was more than an observer in the hallways. Now, he was at the center of the action, helping to save lives in ways he never imagined possible. Her natural instinct to notice small signs in patients, the same instinct that helped her save a life months before, now proved to be her greatest tool in her daily life. The internship also revealed to Rosa that life inside the hospital was an endless cycle of challenges. There were days of glory, when a patient recovered, and others of pain, when life faded away, despite all the efforts of the medical team. Rosa had to learn to deal with these losses, something that affected her deeply. However, Carolina was always there to support her. "We won't always win, Rosa, but every effort counts. Every smile you bring to a patient is a victory." Once the end of her nursing course arrived, Rosa was about to complete one of the greatest achievements of her life. The graduation ceremony was soon, and she could hardly believe that after so much effort, she was about to officially become a nurse. The hospital had already extended a job offer to her, and Rosa knew her new role there would be different. Now, she would enter the halls with the authority and responsibility of someone who not only cared for the environment, but also for people. The night before graduation, Dr. Carolina invited Rosa for a special conversation. They met in the hospital cafeteria, a quiet place, far from the hustle and bustle of the intensive care wards. "I want to congratulate you in a special way, Rosa," said Carolina, with a proud smile on her face. "Not only have you outdone yourself, you taught us something. All of us doctors and nurses learned from your determination, your compassion and your strength." Rosa, always humble, lowered her head, moved by her mentor's words. Carolina continued, "When you saved that patient months ago, you didn't just save his life. You saved mine too. It made me see that medicine goes far beyond technical skills. I was trapped in my own arrogance and pressure, and you reminded me of what really matters. Caring for people with an open heart." Rosa looked at Carolina, and this time, it was she who comforted the doctor with a smile. "You gave me an opportunity one never would have dreamed of, and I am forever grateful for that." On graduation night, the hospital auditorium was full. Employees, family and friends gathered to celebrate the achievement of the new graduates. When Rosa's name was called, the auditorium erupted in applause. The doctors, nurses, and hospital staff, who for years had seen her in the hallways as the silent cleaning lady, now applauded her as an equal. Their children, present at the ceremony, had tears in their eyes with pride. After the ceremony, Rosa was surrounded by colleagues, friends, and family. But it was Dr. Carolina's hug that marked her most. Carolina, visibly moved, whispered, "I always knew you would do something big, Rosa. This is just the beginning." Rosa, moved, returned the hug, knowing that that moment was the end of a journey, but also the beginning of another. In the days that followed, Rosa began her new routine as a nurse. Even though she was in a new role, she never forgot where she came from. He continued to greet everyone at the hospital, from the doctors to the cleaning staff, with the same respect and affection. She knew that everyone there, regardless of their role, played a vital role in the functioning of the hospital. More than ever, Rosa understood that the true value of a person was not in the title they carried, but in the heart they put into what they did. Now, as a nurse, Rosa felt fulfilled. Her life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined, and looking to the future, she knew that many challenges still lay ahead. However, with the strength she had discovered in herself, and the support of her children and Dr. Carolina, Rosa was ready to face whatever came. Her story of overcoming, marked by courage, humility, and gratitude, was an example for everyone who knew her. And so, with a heart full of hope and a bright future ahead, Rosa ended a phase of her life, only to open the doors to something even greater, a journey of healing and care that, she knew, was just beginning.